If I had to describe Rez in a sentence, it would be that it was a light gun game that incorporated some rhythmic elements to set itself apart. Aaero comes from the opposite direction, starting as a rhythm game about riding these rails of light, then slapping Rez-style combat on top. And much like a Halloween cartoon rendition of Frankenstein's monster, the stitches used to keep the two mechanics together are made of rough thread and immediately obvious to the eye. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're shooting and grinding in Aaero.
Aaron, where are you? Where is Aaron right now? No Aaron, huh?
Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, you probably know how much I like rhythm games, especially ones that mash themselves up with other genres to create something new and interesting. And the icing on the cake here is that Aaero is even made by a pair of ex-Freestyle Games developers who worked on DJ Hero, which is one of my favorite rhythm game series ever made. Needless to say, going in, I was excited for this one. Excited enough that I'm even breaking an unofficial rule here by covering a game's port well after its original release. It also might be kind of hard to find something new coming out between Christmas and New Year's. But regardless, it's been a while since I've gotten to say it, but this is my jam! Unfortunately, at most times, Aaero doesn't really blend its two modes of play together very well. There's the rhythm portion, obviously, where you follow these lines the game calls ribbons with the left analog stick. And then there's the Rez-style combat, where you use your right analog stick to highlight and lock onto enemies, then shoot them down before they do the same to you. And the promise in this setup is there. Imagine going through a tunnel simultaneously having to align yourself with the ribbons while also shooting enemies as they pop up in a weird sort of light gun twin stick shooter dynamic. That sounds cool, right? But unfortunately, you'll be left imagining it through almost the entirety of the game's first difficulty level, which you have to clear before you can move on to tougher challenges. It's not until you make it to Advanced that the game finally comes through on this premise, and even then, you'll still find large stretches of just pure combat. In the meantime, however, the two mechanics are kept entirely separate, with each level evenly divided between the two. This may just be me judging the game I want, and not the game I got, but I wish I could have seen these two mechanics cross over more during my time with it. To its credit, the rhythm portions of the game are fun enough to stand on their own. Grinding ribbons is a blast, and Aaero makes clever choices in its track list, picking up heavy electro tunes that feature numerous slides and wobbling techno tones to fit the game's twisting, winding ribbons. Everything from dubstep to drum and bass slip into the set list, and every single song has fun, engaging rhythm sections to them. It's also surprising just how much every song feels like it has its own unique flow and personality, despite working with only circular motions. But the Rez-style combat does not work quite so well, which is a bit of a surprise considering it's, well, lifted straight from Rez, a generally well-regarded game that you would think would make a solid foundation. It clicks when enemies swarm around the edge of the ring-shaped playing field in large numbers, which inspires a lot of rapid flicking motions in response. But frequently, you'll spend an entire minute-long combat section in a boring slugfest with a single bullet sponge enemy and have to aim for tiny, fast-moving projectiles in the middle of the screen, where aiming just right to catch them is fiddly and it's hard to tell when you've even locked on. Other minor design decisions cause additional frustrations, such as the fact that if you stop moving the analog stick, your targeting reticle immediately moves back to the middle of the screen and disappears, which forces you to perpetually move the stick ever so slightly so you can hold your crosshairs on a stationary enemy without letting them disappear. And on that note, I ran into numerous occasions where a bullet sponge enemy would absorb all of my weapon locks when I really wanted them to shoot down the enemy's own projectiles instead. Overall, this is a mechanical system that is simultaneously frustrating due to its finicky, unpolished controls, and dull because of how simple it needs to remain in order to make those controls surmountable.
You done messed up, Aaron!
So what do you get out of 5 hours with Aaero? Well, you can clear the game's 21-song track list, including DLC, in about 2 hours, give or take, but there are 3 difficulties to wade through, and in my 5 hours, I made it halfway through the second one. I can't say it was worth it, however. The rhythm-focused sections were great to play through, but the game's other half, combat, was just too grating an experience to slog through for the good bits. Granted, the big asterisk on that statement is that if you're a big fan of Rez, you might enjoy it a lot more than I did. Personally, I can't compare the two games as I've never actually played Rez, but I have to imagine that something's been lost in the details here that just makes Aaero a less tightly designed game. And it's also worth noting that some of my more nitpicky issues may just be problems with the Switch port, but that's pure conjecture on my part since I haven't played any other version. But what I can tell you is that this is something I should have loved the hell out of. But after my 5 hours, it's telling that I don't really want to open it back up again. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. And be sure to check out some of my other reviews or some longer form content while you're here. But regardless, thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.